Hey, welcome to Typical Geeks. This is episode number 16, and with me is my good friend Jack McLean. Jack, what are you doing today?
Staying busy.
Yeah. So lots happened since we did the last episode of Typical Geeks.
Oh yeah, we've gotten behind.
We've gotten way behind, but I went through a lot of personal medical issues that just knocked the wind right out of me, and it took a good long time to recover because I got tired real easy. But at any rate, a lot's been going on, and we are recording using Wirecast this time rather than Open Broadcaster. So that's going on. I wanted to share with you. I've been an Office 365 user. I did a couple videos about some rants that I've had with my dealings with Microsoft as a partner, and some promises that were made, and then they kind of backed out on me on. So I decided, you know what? I've already got a domain and all that set up under Google Apps for email. So
Wait a minute. That Microsoft made promises they didn't back up on?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, they did. I've got a couple. Actually, I have a video called Frugal's Take. I want to say it was number 9, my Microsoft rant. And I just go into all the gory details. I'm not going to bother everybody with it today, but here's the deal, though. So I had Office 2013 installed on my PC, and Google makes this tool called a migration tool. And what it's supposed to do is go in and take everything, all your email on Exchange, and then upload it to the cloud, up to Google. And it just flat won't work with Office 2013, even though they say it will. And I've seen a whole lot of people go the same thing. And so I called, because if you're a paying Google's Apps customer, you get technical support, phone support. And I called them, and I talked to a guy, and he told me that they would have someone call me back within the half an hour. That was their guarantee. And so that was at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, they did call back as promised, but it was at 9 o'clock at night. And now, most businesses are generally closed up at that time of night.
Right.
So I never did actually talk to anybody on the phone. I ended up doing a manual migration, which I exported PST files. And then when I went to do a manual import on them,
I hear that's about as painful as pulling your own teeth.
It's really painful and slow. And we're heavy duty. We do heavy duty email marketing to our existing customer database. And I had, 33,000 emails I've sent in the last 12 months. That's a lot. And it just kept crapping out. So I said, you know what? Fortunately, I was able to get out pretty much everything of any real importance in this migration. And I just said, at the end of the day, it's probably not that important that I keep keep emails that I've sent, when the bulk of them are marketing emails anyway. So the bottom line is, it's a real painful experience to migrate manually. There is a tool Google has that if you have an Exchange server, you can put it on there, and it'll migrate the mailboxes and all that. And I'm sure that works quite well. But as just an individual, I would not want to go through that. I'm not going to go through it again. I'm just not. So anyhow, I got that done. Fortunately, now I'm working on my sales and marketing stuff. So yeah, there you have it. Let's get to the news, shall we? And coming up right here, FCC votes to move forward on Chairman Tom Wheeler's proposed open internet rules. So let's just get right to this discussion. This all deals with net neutrality. As you know, or some of you may or may not know, the FCC has a period of time open for public comments when they go to make a rule change. And the proposed, Comcast recently accepted money from Netflix to put their users on a internet fast lane, speed it up. Because they were deliberately, in my opinion, my understanding, they were basically throttling getting your Netflix, And as I said, broadband providers are in one business. If you buy broadband internet from the cable company, it should be delivering bits. That's what you're buying, bits.
Right.
Shouldn't matter where those bits come from. That's the whole idea between net neutrality. Your bits get there just as fast to the end user as mine. right? That's net neutrality.
Well, that's
all
what it
bits are
should be.
created equal. That's the concept.
Right.
Comcast doesn't like that. Mediacom doesn't like it. AT&T, Verizon, these guys do not like that. And so they've been using their position as these oligarchies, to basically hold these companies like Netflix hostage and their customers hostage. And so all this went to the FCC. Tom Wheeler is the main guy over there. And they're saying, look, give us net neutrality. It shouldn't matter. All of your tech CEOs wrote in, Yahoo, Microsoft, Apple, all these companies, Google. And Wheeler's going, yeah, you're right. That's a problem. So he basically took and modified it, just the language just a little bit, but he's still going to permit paid fast lanes for the internet. If it is commercially feasible and won't affect anybody in a negative way.
Doesn't that do the exact same thing?
It does. Exactly.
It's the exact same thing.
It's the exact same thing.
It would be like the electric company saying everybody gets the same electricity if you're plugged into the system. But these other companies, they can pump more electricity into theirs because they're willing to pay more. Well, that by default makes me throttled.
Well, I think what'll happen, I think going forward, if Tom Wheeler and everybody gets their way, we won't put you on a deliberate slow lane, but as things advance, speeds increase and all that, if they're not paying, if Netflix isn't paying us
you're going to end up in the slow lane by default.
You're going to end up in the same, right. You're not going to take advantage of the increased speeds.
Exactly.
For Netflix, YouTube, and all the others.
Exactly. Everybody else is going to be running on.
So it's the same exact thing. Right, exactly. The same exact thing, just worded another way. So Tom Wheeler is like, there you go, Comcast. Look, we just got corrupt politicians with these guys, blowing money in their ear,
Right.
But it's open to a 60-day period that commenced about a week ago, I guess, and for more public comment before these rules. The worst thing he says that he can take on them is creating or putting them, I think, under what's called Title II, which makes them basically a utility, like Ma Bell was, AT&T, et cetera. And that would give them, see, they don't really have any authority. Under the way things are written for ISPs right now, the FCC really doesn't have much authority over them. Mm-hmm. And, of course, the last thing in the world they want is to be regulated like utility. Because
they should. But I mean, that's exactly what they have become. 15, 20 years ago, that was not the case because very few people had actual internet run to their homes. Now you'll be hard pressed to go into any neighborhood and find one home that doesn't have some kind of internet access. So that's basically what they have become by default, is a utility. It's just like electricity, just like water, just like anything else.
Yeah, exactly. It is a utility and should be treated as such.
Exactly.
Because you're getting the tax breaks as utilities. Yep. What is an ISP? An ISP essentially is a last mile provider. They're the ones that's actually pulling that internet to your home, that last mile from your backbone providers. Mm-hmm. That's what they're doing. And you've paid for those bits in your monthly bill to be delivered at a certain speed. And right? That's what you paid for. It should not matter. This is not net neutrality. This clearly shows that they don't care about net neutrality. It's all about the profit, and it's just going to hurt us even worse. So, yeah, they suck.
Pretty much. That is our official conclusion.
Suck. And Tom Wheeler just ain't listening, and it's just bad news for the internet. The open internet that we've all, kind of grown up with and become accustomed to is going away. Just that simple. And who's going to ultimately pay for these internet fast lanes? We are. Netflix will raise their prices, and Netflix just passed $1 a month price increase to new subscribers. Mm-hmm. You cannot tell me part of that wasn't to help offset the cost of paying off these guys. You won't convince me any other way.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
Just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think so. I don't know. Moving along. How about this? YouTube is proposing to buy Twitch for $1 billion. Now, the reason this is interesting to me is when I first started live streaming, I was using Justin.tv as my CDN.
Mm-hmm.
So, you were live streaming, and then Justin started Twitch kind of as a subcategory, which proved to be immensely popular. And now, I think with the PS4, I believe you can stream your live gameplay to Twitch. I think, if I understand that correctly, there's other services allow you to live stream your gaming to Twitch. And, Justin TV had capacity issues just when they were hosting live streams. And this thing's taken off like wildfire. And their whole infrastructure cannot handle, the amount of traffic that they're getting. They just don't have it. And plus, it's really, if you're creating videos that you want to share on YouTube with Twitch, well, what do you got to do? You got to archive your gameplay on Twitch, then download it, and then turn around and upload it to YouTube. See, YouTube, I think this is a smart move. And I will say, as a YouTube content creator, the tech channels definitely don't get the kind of love from YouTube that we should. My opinion, we don't get that.
I agree. 100%.
They're making commercials. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but there's a lot of commercials floating around for YouTube, with hair and makeup and cooking and making celebrities out of these. I didn't
YouTube see any tech related things on there.
There's no tech related stuff out there.
Whenever I go to the if you just go to the Google, or not Google, but the YouTube homepage, rarely if ever do I see any tech channels being promoted on the homepage.
No,
it almost never happens.
No, tech channels don't really get the kind of love, and there's very few tech channels that pulls in the kinds of millions of views of videos on the tech channels, that pulls in 2 million, 3 million views. It just don't really happen that.
Right.
I mean, it's very, very rare
when
something like that happens. I get that, but I think part of this is because YouTube doesn't show tech content creators that kind of love. And
I agree.
But I think with Twitch, okay, now that obviously they're going to promote the heck out of that if this acquisition goes through. They'll promote the gaming stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there'll be a good kind of halo effect in the tech community on that, right? Because there's a lot of PC gaming and that kind of thing. And these people also, a lot of your PC gamers have passion for other forms of tech and do tech videos and stuff. So maybe in an indirect way, that would not hurt people creating tech content on YouTube.
I think it could only help.
I do too. I think this is a good move, and I think eventually Twitch is going to die under its own weight due to the inability of Twitch to handle the traffic and the ability to monetize it, and for people that are live streaming their games to monetize it. I think they'll die under their own weight if they don't.
When all else fails, sell it to Google
or Yahoo. Yahoo's even better. I just read the other day. The Myers, the CEO, she likes to acquire new companies and promptly shut them down. I don't get that, but she's really buying companies more or less for talent, for engineering and stuff like that.
That would probably be why then. Apple's notorious for doing that too.
Yeah. Okay, here comes one of my favorite subjects of all right here. Here we go. Xbox finally dropping the Kinect and to make it cheaper, and also in a double whammy, I like this, to catch PlayStation 4, Xbox One gets cheaper and drops Kinect, but they also made a big change to the Xbox Gold as well, which, by the way, I'm an Xbox Gold member. Now, why am I an Xbox Gold member?
I think they watched your video, Bruce.
They did.
That's what it was.
Because I did a video before the Xbox One was launched. In that video, I stated, if Microsoft does everything they're saying they're planning on doing, this unit will be a commercial failure. Mm-hmm. All right? And understand, by commercial failure, I'm not talking about selling 1 million or 2 Xboxes. I'm talking they got to sell millions upon millions upon millions of Xboxes to be considered a commercial success. All right? And they were, there was draconian DRM in there. where which allow you to share games with friends and all that.
There was the whole always on.
You weren't going to be able to sell your used games. You weren't going to, and it had to call home constantly, be connected to the internet. There was a whole laundry list of stuff. Plus the Kinect, which some people just simply don't like and don't use. I've got an Xbox 360 with a Kinect, and the first thing I did was take the Kinect off of it. It was useless to me, and it really upset my wife. She was nervous over, here's this thing connected to the internet with the camera. I don't know what's going on.
Don't know when it's on, when it's not.
I don't like it. It makes me nervous. Unhook it. And I did. Rather than saying, no, honey, it doesn't work that way. There was no convincing her about it.
Well, the thing is, it's not so much that it doesn't work, that it can work that way. That's the thing, and that's why everybody was nervous. You have something with a camera on it that's always connected, and Microsoft said it always had to be connected or it wouldn't work. I mean, a lot of people had issues with that. It wasn't just the just the paranoid few out there. There's a lot of people that had issues with that. I mean, there was a big stink about it. I remember for months after it came out. I can't blame them. I mean,
but you know what? Wouldn't you know? About a week after my membership renewed, that's when I got the news that the Xbox Live was going to suddenly, because I don't do multiplayer on my games. I just play them in campaign mode.
Right. That's what I do.
And so I really have very little use for Xbox Live Gold membership other than to watch Netflix, Hulu, and that kind of thing on the Xbox.
Right.
And now that they got that, I'm going to go ahead and cancel my membership. I don't know. I probably won't get a refund, but I'm going to make sure that it doesn't renew again next year. I mean, it was like $60
right
for a year. You know, it's crazy. Never again. Never again. So yeah, I got hosed once again, right?
Yeah,
it's a bad deal. I mean, Xbox, if you're not doing multiplayer gaming and all that sort of thing, if you're not a heavy duty Xbox user, then Xbox Live Gold was a bad deal.
Right.
You know, for the price of annual membership, you can go out and buy a Chromecast or, you know, a Roku player and get Netflix and.
Oh, you could get two Chromecasts.
Yeah, you get two of them for the price of just, yeah. So that's kind of ridiculous. Here's another. I love this story. Let's go on this. So, if Comcast wasn't bad enough buying Time Warner, how about this? AT&T to buy Directv for $48.5 billion.
Nice.
Now, here's something interesting. And that is that with AT&T and Directv roughly are in about 25% of the U.S. market. So in about 25% of the market, you can have your choice between AT&T Uverse for your video, or you can get DirecTV at the same time.
Right.
So this is going to be a bad deal, another bad deal. I mean, this is what we're seeing, these mega mergers and the elimination of choice. Mm-hmm. All right. So AT&T wants to buy DirecTV. What's going to happen ultimately in those markets where the two are together, the competitive pricing, because these guys like DirecTV will make you special promotions, whatever, to like leave Uverse, let's say, and vice versa. And those kind of things are going to go away. When as already happened over and over again, when this is owned by AT&T, then those kind of promotions and kind of things will come to a stop, and you'll see all kinds of anti-competitive behavior on this right now. And of course, the end game is that you'll be able to bundle your television, your internet, and cell phone all in one bill. Mm-hmm. That's the end game for this thing, and you're going to see prices go up, not down, and you're going to see less innovation as you see more of this kind of consolidation.
Well, they don't have to innovate anymore.
I hope, and I really hope this deal does not go through. You know, I know DirecTV and Dish Network have talked, I don't know how many times, about consolidating into one service. And of course, that never really doesn't pass the sniff test. You know?
No.
It smells bad. And this deal definitely doesn't pass the sniff test.
DirecTV and Dish, you said were in talks about consolidating.
Yes, they have many times.
That's like Apple and Microsoft talking about consolidating.
Well, yeah, but
it doesn't make any sense at all.
There,
That you would have one mega corporation that would own all satellite television
yeah,
in
that's why it won't pass muster.
that's
Yeah,
insane.
that's exactly why it won't pass the muster on that. So is would be if AT&T purchases Directv, what do you think is going to happen next? What's the if you were Verizon sitting there, what would you do?
Oh, you're going to be looking out for Dish.
You're going to be making an
You're going to be
acquisition. You're
buying
going to start open
exactly.
that checkbook and trying to buy Dish.
You're going to be buying Dish, and then you're going to have
So
basically
guess
you're going to
what?
have
Dish and
all your cell
DirecTV
phone.
would go away, and
Yep,
now it's just AT&T and
it's
Verizon.
two mega corporations run that run
Exactly, two
everything.
mega corporations,
They own all your communications.
and then they're going to start looking to eyeball purchasing Comcast or somebody like that.
Hmm.
Lest people forget, it wasn't terribly long ago we had to break AT&T up as a monopoly.
Hmm.
I don't know if maybe some younger folks don't remember that or not, but there was a day.
It's about 12, 13 years ago.
There was a day when the only way you could not buy a phone. You could not legally buy a home telephone. You had to rent your phone through Ma Bell, as we called her.
I was back in the day.
That was back in the day. That was
Right,
it.
you're talking 20 plus years, but
And
yeah.
that was it. There was no competition. There was none. It was just AT&T owned everything.
Yep.
And you could not buy a telephone or anything like that. And the government said, look, we got to break you up. And they produced what they call baby bells. And man, I want to say that Verizon was an offshoot of one of the baby bells. So it's
Do
all
you remember? Do you
convoluted.
remember the commercials? The commercials. They would have some really cool technology that seemed like it was off Star Trek, and they would at the end of the commercial it would say, "And the company that will bring it to you is AT&T." Do you remember those commercials?
Oh wow! No, I can't say that I do.
Google Glass was on there, and
Really?
this was a commercial that was popular probably 12 to 13 years ago, and it would say being able to be on the internet and streaming all your movies directly to your glasses and everything, and it had this person wearing what obviously looked just like Google Glass, and it said, and the people who will bring it to you, AT&T, and then it had something that looked just like an iPad,
I thought
and
they
it
got
was
the idea from Star Trek Next
no,
Generation with the
that
Borg.
that all of that stuff. If you look at the iPad, if you look at the Google Glass, if you look at some of the major what we consider major innovations in technology of the past 5 or 6 years, if you will look back on those commercials, just do a search for them on maybe go to YouTube and do a search for the company that will bring it to you as AT&T or whatever. You're
Mhm.
going to see every one of those inventions. They previewed those. It was probably about 15 years ago.
I'll have to look at that. I'll have to. I
It's
know
really
that
it's
I know that looks strangely when people wear Google Glass,
hmm
looks strangely like
strangely
the Borg
familiar.
Collective.
Pretty much.
I don't know if you know who Robert Scoble is, but one of the most frightening pictures of Google Glass is this guy in the shower.
I've
It
I've
is
I've,
disturbing.
I've heard about
I'm
it.
sure he's a nice guy, but that is a disturbing photo,
I refuse to Google it. I
and
do. I don't want that
don't
image burned into my brain. Uh,
don't don't.
one of your articles here that really caught my attention was the 4 terabyte SSD.
Isn't that sweet? Let's bring that up.
It is sweet in one aspect, and then in another way, it kind of scares me.
Let's bring that up right here on the browser. There we go. So yeah, SanDisk unveiled recently a 4 terabyte SSD. By the way, this is a enterprise class SSD, so it's a little different than what the consumer interface would be. But they're also planning on rolling out an 8 terabyte and a 16 terabyte
That's what everybody
version on it. You
needs.
know what they're doing? One of the
Yes.
cool things that they're doing with SSDs is now they're stacking the chips vertically rather than horizontally, so you can increase the density of the chips in the same amount of space,
You know
which
the
is kind
two
of cool.
right. It's cool technology, and I mean it's amazing to think that just a few years ago, if you had the big SSD was a 256 gig
Right.
SSD. That was the big one, and then 512, and then a terabyte, and now they're going straight to talking about 8 and 16 terabyte. The scary thing to me, as a pack rat, as a self-professed pack rat, the biggest scare to me is, well, two things scare me about this. One is the price. I don't know if you've If you've seen a price quote on these, I didn't see it on the site, but it ain't going to be cheap.
Oh, no, no, no.
But that's the first thing that kind of scares me about the 1 terabyte and larger, 4 terabyte, 16 terabyte SSDs is the price. Second thing that kind of scares me about it is if you have a rotating an old technology rotating mechanical hard drive, most of the time you can determine when that drive is going to fail. With the smart technology built into the firmware these days, and with a few simple tests such as crystal disk info and things like that, you can a lot of times you can have a warning. It may be a 20-minute warning, or it may be a 6-month warning, but a lot of times you'll get a little bit of a warning when that drive is just not acting exactly right, and you can get your data off of it. If you're talking about an SSD when they fail, they just fail.
Sure.
Period. There's no one day you turn your computer on and it just doesn't work anymore, and you never have time to back that data up, and that kind of that kind of frightens me a little bit when you're talking about 4+ terabytes of data.
Everything I've read though, and everything that I know about SSDs, typically, I do know that they're susceptible more to damage from unexpected power failure than, say, a mechanical hard drive. But other than that, everything indicates that the reliability of an SSD has been so greatly improved over the last 4 or 5 years that I really think that that they are as safe, if not safer, than a mechanical drive.
Right, and I'm not
now,
saying
see, the thing is always up to you, the end user, to make sure you back up your data.
Well, and that's what I was going to say.
All right, and we get that. I did a rant about technology that really makes me angry when it was mechanical hard drives. And the reason
pet peeves.
And the reason being, the mechanical hard drive, we started working on those back in it's either 1953 or 1956. I believe 1956. It was IBM came out with the first mechanical hard drive.
Sure, it wasn't 61.
No, it was 1956 when IBM actually. That's according to Wikipedia. You can look it up. Okay.
Okay, I'll look it up.
Either way, okay. Let's say it was 1961. It's still been 50 years.
Right.
It was 50 years in 2011.
You'd think they'd have that technology.
2001, rather.
You'd think they'd have the technology perfected by now.
You would think that these things would be absolutely bulletproof by now.
As you said in your video.
You name one product out there that we've been manufacturing for 50 years, by the millions, by the billions, that you can still get it home and it dies it may be dead on arrival, and it may die within a month or two, and people are going like, yeah, that's, that can happen.
Well,
name another product where people would tolerate that.
That should not happen.
What other product would people tolerate that kind of thing from?
Well, it's funny you should say that. How long has the microwave oven been around?
Back in the 50s.
About 50 years, correct?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And how you can take your typical microwave oven now that you bought from Walmart for $115 at Walmart, everyday low price. You bring it home, and I guarantee you that if it lasts for 90 days, it's probably going to last you for probably 7 or 8 years. I mean, it's just going to keep on going and going and going. The microwave I have in here now, I bought from back when Sears was a thing. I bought it from Sears probably 6 years ago, and it still works perfectly. All day, every day, something's in that microwave being cooked, and it still works perfectly. But yet, I see hard drives. Here in my shop, I'll see at least 3 to 4 hard drive failures per week. And yeah, sometimes it's on an old desktop system that's 10 years old, whatever. But a lot of the time, it's from a relatively new laptop computer, say less than a year old. And the drive
certainly within 3 years. Within 3 years, it's not untypical at all.
No,
but also like your the big Western digitals, the 4 terabyte and whatever. Those things tend to have, I think, a higher failure rate than the like 1 and 2 terabyte models.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I included a link in the show notes, and I don't know if you had the chance to check it out, but it's hard drive failure rates by brand, and the brands that I personally recommend. There have been some tests done, and I think, let me go ahead and open up the show notes here. I want to say this was from PC World. It is from PC World, and they ran a test. I think they tested around 27,000 hard drives, and basically, they're
27,000?
that's what it says
That
here.
can't
A
be
study
right.
over several years and 27,000
Well,
hard
maybe
drives. Yeah,
multiple,
three years,
multiple, yeah, the
27,000.
same brand
Yep.
and same model, maybe.
3-year, $27,000 hard drive study reveals the
Okay.
most reliable hard drive makers.
All right.
And what they have found is real close to what I have found here in the shop. And take in mind, I've been working on computers here for about 10 years, and what I see personally is uh, Seagate hard drives have an abysmal record. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, absolutely abysmal. You couldn't force me to buy it. I don't think you could give me Seagate hard drives. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't take them if you were giving them to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, about probably 85 to 90% of the time when any computer comes in here, be it a desktop or a laptop system, about 85 to 90% of the time is running a Seagate hard drive. Okay. The only thing that I see even come close to the failure rate, but I don't see many of the drives, is a Toshiba hard drive. Um, Now, what they're seeing here is Seagate again on their little chart here. They're seeing the 1.5 to 3 terabyte Seagate hard drives with the absolute highest failure rates, and
And
they're
that would be the
talking.
mainstream ones that
That
are
would
going
be
to
your
ship in a
main.
lot of OEM machines and the Dells and HPs and all that stuff.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
as well as your externals, the ones that come in your
All
external.
right. Sure. Sure.
And the thing that really bothers me about that is that's what your average consumer is going to be buying to back up their system. So they're going to be buying these failure prone drives to back up their system. That's the ones they catch on sale. And the 1.5 terabyte to 4 terabyte backup drives is what they're going to be using. And I have seen more of those fail than just about anything else. Now, what I personally recommend and what I've had the least amount of failures with are the Western Digital drives, but I say that with a little bit of reservation because I do not recommend the green drives. The Western Digital Green series are horrible. They have a failure rate that's right up there with the Seagate drives. What I would recommend if you're going to go Western Digital, at the very minimum, get the blue. And what I would really recommend is either the black series or the red, which is their uh,
And
uh,
that's what I'm using, the black.
exactly. I would recommend the black or the red. What's the word I'm looking for here? The red is their not industrial, but enterprise.
Enterprise.
Enterprise. The red is their enterprise model. Now you do pay more for your black and your red drives, but I've had three Western Digital black drives in my main work desktop over here for 6 years now, and it's been running 24/7 almost continually for
Mm-hmm.
6 years. Never had a single issue with drives. So that's just personal experience. Anytime that I pull a customer's hard drive, like I said, normally it's a Seagate or a Toshiba. Throw it in the trash. I always replace it with a Western Digital Black.
Any rate, what I'm happy about to see though is I think with this kind of technology always trickles down, and ultimately we're going to start seeing, and I think in the very near future, really affordable 1 terabyte SSDs,
Hmm.
and and there'll be PCI Express SSDs.
I have
So
a
we're going to see
question for you.
faster speeds on those.
As far as your hard drives goes,
Yeah.
do you believe? And now I've been called a
Uh-huh.
conspiracy theorist for this.
Hmm.
But do you believe that like you said, the technology of hard drives has been around, and I'm not talking about the SSDs, I'm talking about the rotating
Mechanical.
mechanical hard
Okay.
drives. The technology's been around for 50 years plus.
Yep.
They could have it perfected by now,
Yep.
but they don't.
They
Do
don't.
you think that it's planned obsolescence? Do you think that
Well,
they
that's a
build?
great point, and I have a response to that. The whole planned obsolescence thing. Okay, if
Mhm.
you talk to hardware engineers, there's a term that's used in the industry called value engineering, and value engineering basically is a thought process that says. And I think this was. Let me give you a real world example. Remember, we had the megahertz wars going on in CPUs.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So we had, the Pentium 1, the Pentium 2, Pentium 3, and, you'd go to 466 megahertz, and then all that.
Right, right.
Then a year later, it was 800 megahertz, et cetera. The thought process is why over engineer a product that will have a basic economic life of 2 or 3 years? Why put the extra funds to make this product last 6 years, when
Right.
ultimately the customer is going to replace it in 2 to
So
3 years.
basically, it is planned obsolescence.
It is planned obsolescence from the perspective that most people, the majority of their customers, will replace it with better, faster, greater before this product ends its economic life.
And what I'm seeing
And
is
now that made a lot of sense, particularly in the world of CPUs and budget computers and the Dells and stuff when they were building systems for that very purpose.
Right.
But now you'll notice that the megahertz war is over. For the most part, it's over. Now it was the core wars, although here we are. I just want to throw this in, in a minute. I think a lot of people are looking forward to the introduction of Broadwell, which is now on hold till fourth quarter. They're going to use the 14 nanometer dies in that, but it's still.
I think I know what you're about to say.
They're still heavily promoting the 4-core. Come on, Intel. Come on. We've been dealing with 4-core for how many generations now? 4 cores.
Two things here.
Come on, give us at least 6 as just kind of the standard CPU.
Right. Well, there's a few things that go into that, and this kind of leads off into something else. So I'm going to kind of pull it back a little bit. But when you're talking about, it's funny you should say that though, because I remember being on a job. And this was years and years back. This is when the Pentium 4 was relatively new. Okay. And I was talking about someone overclocking their Pentium 4, and I think they had overclocked it to like 2.8 gigahertz or something, right? And which was, that was high end back in the day because your top of the line processors were barely pushing 2 gigahertz. And this guy told me, and I questioned this in my own mind, and I'm like, you know what? That makes sense. He said, they've had processors that would do 5 gigahertz for years. He said they've had them for years. All the way back in the 80s, they had processors that would do 5 gigahertz. He said, but they can't just throw it out there like that. You can't do it that way. You have to put out your 3 gigahertz, then your 3.2 gigahertz, then your 4 gigahertz, then your 4.4 gig. Said you can't just give them the best thing there is you got out there. You got to give it to them.
But I think it's certain. I'm just thinking. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm just thinking from this perspective. Okay, one. Even today, we don't have a great amount of software that takes advantage of things like the multi-core.
Multi-core, exactly.
Or hyper-threading for that matter.
I can name on one hand the number of applications I have seen that will take advantage of more than one core.
All right.
That's it's ridiculous.
What they're working, if you take Broadwell, and ultimately, the real, if you'll notice, and maybe I'm seeing this as a pattern, and you probably are too, performance is now being measured per watt rather than just raw horsepower. It's how much performance we can get out of a watt of energy on a CPU as it is.
And if you're anything like me, you don't care. You want to see more
if you're
horsepower.
A desktop user, it's not really all that beneficial to you.
If you're carrying around a netbook, or I don't want to say netbook, but if you're carrying around an ultra portable laptop, yes, that is
that's where I think that's where a lot of their focus is now is getting all that performance out of the watt that they can. Another thing gets me excited about Broadwell, especially if you're a system builder. A lot of people are really wanting very small PCs. There's not enough room to put a discrete GPU in there. Nice big heavy duty graphics card.
It's on the chip.
And they're saying that the Iris Pro graphics are going to be about 40% faster and better on Broadwell. So I'm going off on a tangent here, but we're going to be due for a MacBook refresh this fall, right?
Also right.
Okay,
and don't forget the Mac Mini. We're way over.
I think I'm now speculating that Apple's going to hold off on the refresh of the Mac Mini until after the introduction of Broadwell.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
And Intel's going to miss the back to school season because of this delay. The Christmas, no, they'll make that in time. Apple has probably got one of the first dibs on as many of the Broadwell mobile chips as they can because I look for them to roll out the new MacBook Pros, October, November, somewhere around there, refresh on the MacBook Pros.
Somewhere around there.
So, it certainly not would make, why would you do another refresh with Haswell? Wouldn't make any sense.
Right. But, back to what we were saying.
And, of course, also your PC makers and laptops and all these guys,
Well, I think back kind of back to what we were talking about as
Right.
far as the planned obsolescence. I think you're right. They design things to work for about 3 to 5 years, or whatever the figure was you threw out. I tend to agree with that. The problem is, the price doesn't coincide with that a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no, if I get let's say I get a MacBook Pro, and it has a 500 gig rotating hard drive in it, and I get a Toshiba from Walmart and pay $399 for it. Those hard drives should not be the same hard drive. They should not have the same brand of hard drive in there. There should be an enterprise class drive in that MacBook Pro, and there should be the cheapest, bottom of the line, garbage, disposable
You know, the MacBook
Hitachi
Pro,
Death
you don't
Star.
need. I won't say you don't need, but make a
Well, no, I agree
mechanical
with you. You
drive.
shouldn't have a
Look, make a
mechanical
mechanical
drive
drive an
anyway. Right.
option.
Right. But there
Okay,
shouldn't be
make
a need for it. I
and
agree.
it should just be basically SSD. Period.
No, I agree with you there.
Yeah,
But I'm
just
saying
call it a day.
if you are gonna put a rotating hard drive in a high end product, or what would be considered a premium product,
Mhm.
if you are gonna put a rotating hard drive in it, it needs to be an enterprise class drive, and not some cheap the same El Cheapo drive that you go to Walmart and pick up. It shouldn't be
I
that.
know. I know. Last thing that I have, and this is really really cool. I'll bring this up here. This is absolutely free. It's the Razer Surround. And what this does is it is a virtual 7.1 surround sound for your headphones, right? And you can actually listen to a demo without installing the software right off the website. There's a donation for it that goes to support charity. It's very, very cool. I've not installed it because I've got a Logitech gaming headset with their surround sound software, and I was kind of afraid it might create an issue. I don't know. They've raised about $24,000 in donations for this, but it is freaking awesome. And I urge everybody, even if you're using desktop speakers, 2.1 surround, the sound, the improvement in the sound is amazing. And if you're listening to those stereo headphones, it's probably the best implementation of virtual surround that I've heard. And you go to Razer, and it's razerzone.com/surround.
Two observations. One, it says on yours they've raised 24,000.
Yeah.
It says on mine they've raised 33.
Okay.
But that's one observation. Two, the software's pretty. Software's
Razer
really-
does cool stuff.
that is really cool.
I urge people to get this and play around with it. Make a donation as well if you do. Go ahead and you don't even have to install it. You can listen to a sample right there off their website and determine if that's something you would be interested in. One more comment before I turn the rest of this over to you, Jack. And that was our last episode. Man, did we take a beating in the thumbs down. We got just about as many thumbs down on that video as we did thumbs up. And we took a pretty good beating in the comments over the comparison of I think it was a Razer, their 14-inch gaming laptop versus buying a new MacBook Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, a lot of people think we didn't do our research. And I just want to make it clear that, we absolutely do. We could have probably went about it better. And I wrote up a paragraph explaining, what we did and why we did it. In all fairness, you can't, the two really probably shouldn't have compared them as we did, because yes, you can play games on a MacBook Pro Retina, but it doesn't, it's a different market. They're not a gaming laptop.
Right. And you can
Razer put all their bucks in. A lot of those bucks go in, I think, is the,
well, that's like
the GTX 880M
to me,
mobile
that's
processor.
like saying, when you're talking about, you told me about the bashing we took in the comments.
And it's deserved. We screwed up.
And it comes down to this. People say, you can kind of sort of game on a MacBook Pro. Well, that's like me saying, well, yeah, and you can kind of sort of get work done on a Razer, or you know what I mean? So, it's,
you wouldn't buy a Razer in order to do spreadsheets and Excel and Outlook.
But you could if you wanted to. And it's the same thing with the MacBook Pro. You wouldn't buy a MacBook Pro to play Call of Duty, but you could if you wanted to. So, it's they do cater to different markets, and a direct comparison of the two. The only way you can do a direct comparison of the two is in hardware.
Well,
That's all you can do. You
see,
can
the
compare
original
them.
thought, because it was my fault. I'm the one who came up with the topic. And my original thought was nice things cost a hell of a lot of money.
Well, and that's
Not
exactly
good stuff
right.
costs money. And,
Right.
with Apple, you get a certain, and the hardware, for the most part, is basically comparable until you get into the video card.
Well,
and
and you're right about what you're saying. I mean, and as far as that goes, I think you were correct in your comparison. I don't think you were wrong in your comparison at all because nice things cost money, and that was your example. It would be like, and I can give somebody a good comparison as far as the Razer versus a MacBook Pro. It is exactly like a Nissan Skyline car versus a BMW. They both cost a lot of money. They're both really expensive. One is built for racing from point A to point B as fast as you can get it there. The other one's a little more luxurious, but they're both high-end products and they both cost money, and neither one of them compare well to a Ford Escort. So,
right.
But I mean that it is what it is. I mean, I understand why there would be some fans out there, especially gamers, that would get upset about a direct comparison.
All right. Wow, we are almost an hour in.
Us an hour?
No. Yeah. You wanted
let me run through these updates real quick.
Okay.
Just for those that don't know,
Okay.
I can get through this pretty fast. iOS 7.1.1 is out. Basically, it fixes. Well, I won't say all. It fixes most of the bad stuff that was with 7.1. Anyone who upgraded, and I would definitely recommend if you're just running 7, run and get the 7.1 update because it fixes a lot of the mess that was caused by the by 7. But the point one update, there's a few little bug fixes here and there with the Touch ID on the 5S, etc. Nothing major, but and they with Apple being Apple, typically they won't tell you everything that was fixed. They'll give you the top 3 or 4 things, like the Touch ID bug and stuff like that, and the keyboard not being as responsive as it should be. But typically they won't tell you everything that it fixes. It smooths the operating system out just a little bit more, and you'll notice a difference. OS 10, day before yesterday, I believe, came out with their point 3, 10.9.3 update, and they introduced a new version of Safari with that. Big whoop-de-doo. I don't think anybody uses Safari anyway.
I do.
But,
I do.
we're not talking about you, Bruce.
I do. However, I will say, though, that inevitably, I always end up basically using Chrome as my daily driver.
Well, and that's what I use. Well, I take that back. I'll tell you what my daily driver is when we get done with the show. But Chrome was my daily driver. But 10.3, 10.9.3, they introduced not really any new features, but some bug fixes. And anyone who's running Mavericks, I believe, especially if you're running it on an older system such as my late 2009 iMac, you're going to see an overall bump in speed. At least I did. Finder just seems more responsive. Searches seem more responsive. The keyboard seems a little more responsive. It just seems altogether snappier to me. Of course, there are some security fixes and bug fixes and such. But that's basically, I would definitely recommend going out and getting these updates. If you haven't already updated, do get these updates. And these are not wow factor updates. They didn't introduce a lot of new features. They didn't introduce any new, really anything new to the table, but they kind of smoothed out what was already there. So 10.9.3 and 7.1.1 are where 10.9 should have been and iOS 7 should have been, basically. So.
All right. Well, I think on that note, we probably ought to be wrapping up this episode of Typical Geeks. Jack, is there anything else you want to
add? Only that, one more thing. Office for iPad. We hadn't went over Office for iPad. 4 or 5 years too late. Is it going to make a difference? Maybe. Maybe not, but for anyone who was using Office, the unavailability rather of Office for the iOS as an excuse not to have an iPad, well, enjoy your new iPad.
Well, bear in mind though that you need to be an Office 365 subscriber to
$100.
in order to take advantage of all the features of it. And I think it's good. I think Balmer. Well,
I think they've done
I think Balmer was actually behind getting it on the iPad finally.
They done their work on this.
I think it's a good idea, and I'm glad to see that. I think for Microsoft to get it out there for the iPad is an acknowledgement. Conspiracy theories aside, I don't think they're doing a gangbuster business with Surface.
Right.
And the majority of folks own either an iPad or an Android tablet, and the thing is, they're a software company. Understand, Microsoft, first and foremost, is a software company, and Office is one of their crown jewels, big money makers. And they're trying to get everybody to get on this whole Office 365 thing. So if you kind of put all the parts together, we got Office 365. We want everybody to get this thing. We have to have a compelling reason for a lot of, especially home users and that kind of thing, to sign up for Office 365 Home Premium, which is $99 a year for up to 5 PCs, Macs, and tablets. There you go. There's a compelling reason.
Well, that was what I was going to say. I believe that the reason Microsoft held off for so long in introducing Office for iPad is they were trying to push the Surface. That was really its only selling point, is we're going to have portable Office running on your and since it bombed so bad, I mean, they had to bring it out and make up the difference with it. But that being said, I think they did put a lot of work into this.
No, it's a great application on the iPad.
It looks great. It looks great. And to me, this is just my personal opinion. I did install it on my daughter's iPad so I could play around with it. And to me, I like the user interface much better than I do Office 2013.
But you know what? I'm dropping my Office 365 subscription, so I'm not going to be able to take
Google Docs.
Yeah. It's I'm sure there's going to be people go, what? Well, watch my videos. I explain what happened. And you have to, when you own a business, it's different. You can't play Sunday morning or Monday morning quarterback on somebody for making that kind of decision. There's a lot of thought that went back into this and a lot of work. But it's a whole combination of factors. Google Apps make sense for certain situations, Office 365 for others. In my case, Google Apps made the most sense. On that note, we're going to wrap up this week's installment of Typical Geeks. Thanks for joining me today, Jack.
Appreciate it.